Number 10. Lula Cora Hood. Grace Cafisto was 15 years old in 1970 when her mother, known as Cora, disappeared. It wasn't the first time Cora disappeared after a family argument, but it was the only time she did not return. The mystery of Cora went on for decades until 1996 when the family was contacted by Illinois police saying they thought they had found the remains of Cora in an abandoned brickyard. DNA tests weren't available, so the family held a memorial service and accepted her fate. When DNA testing finally became available, this supposedly solved case became unsolved. Detectives went back to work, and in just 2 weeks, Cora was found in Jacksonville, Florida. Cora was 84 years old when they found her, and for the bones in the brickyard, that remains a mystery to this day. Number 9. Petra Pazitka. Petra was a computer science student from Braunschweig, Germany in 1984. Her family reported her missing when she failed to show up to her brother's birthday party. Petra was only 24, and despite efforts such as putting her on a German unsolved crimes television show, her body was never found. She was declared dead in 1989 when a carpenter's trainee confessed to her killing. However, police found her living in Dusseldorf when they went to investigate a theft at her apartment. She told them that she had been living in various cities throughout Germany and under the name Petra Schneider. She corroborated the story by providing an old ID card. Through this, the family was able to gain closure. However, Petra wanted nothing to do with her family and continues to live alone to this day. Number 8. Savannah Harris Todd. Savannah was only a year old when she went missing from her grandparents' South Carolina home, and her biological mother, Dorothy Lee Barnett, was the primary suspect. Barnett had bipolar disorder and had recently lost a custody battle with her ex-husband, Benjamin. Devastated, Benjamin continued his search for more than 20 years, and finally hit the jackpot when he learned that they moved from South Africa to New Zealand and finally Australia, where Savannah and her mother were extradited back to the United States. Her mother served a short jail sentence. Today, Savannah still stands by her mother and has a good relationship with both parents, even though one technically abducted her. Number 7. Winston Bright. In 1990, Winston Bright kissed his wife and children and headed to work at the New York Telephone Company. A day just like any other day, except Winston never returned. Devastated, his wife collaborated with the NYPD for over a year to try to find Winston, and even moved her kids into the projects to save money. And after 10 years, the court granted her pension payouts and insurance payouts from his company. Shockingly, in 2007, out of the blue, she gets a call from a guy named Kwame Saku out of San Diego, California, claiming to be Winston. And doctors were leaning toward believing his story of an abrupt amnesia episode. However, neither his family nor a judge were convinced. And in spite of DNA evidence, he would not be allowed to claim his old identity nor his pension. Number 6. Richard Wayne Landers, Jr. Richard was a chubby-cheeked 5-year-old when he became the subject of a vicious custody battle. Living out of the car with his mother and stepfather, his grandparents became increasingly concerned, so they took him and fled Indiana, and seemingly disappeared without a trace. The search went on for more than 20 years, until finally sheriffs in Todd County, Minnesota identified him through the use of his original Social Security number. This prompted a long overdue meeting with the grandparents at their home. It also prompted a meeting with the boy, now named Michael, who insisted he was saved, not kidnapped. Number 5. Lucy Ann Johnson. When Lucy went missing from her Surrey, Canada home in 1961, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police had always suspected her husband Marvin of her murder. However, there was no body, so the case went cold. 51 years later, her 59-year-old daughter Linda cracked the case. After learning that her mother once lived in the community of Carcross, Alaska, she put an ad in the paper there hoping to find her mother. She then got a phone call from a woman named Rhonda. Not only did Rhonda know where Lucy was, she informed her she was her half-sister. When they were reunited, Lucy was able to tell her that she left Marvin because of an abusive relationship. Number 4. Carlos Sanchez Ortiz de Salazar. Though a trained psychiatrist at age 26, Carlos suffered from severe depression. He lived in civil Spain, where he disappeared in 1996. And in 2010, 14 years after his disappearance, the Spanish authority declared him dead. Carlos was recently discovered in a nature reserve where he had been living out his life as a hermit for the last 20 years. He was discovered by 2 mushroom pickers who say that he showed them his passport to confirm his identity and said he had been living there for the past 20 years. And when the family finally showed up to see Carlos, he was already gone. Again. They say they won't rest until they find him. Number 3. Edgar Latulip. In 1986, 21-year-old Edgar Latulip went missing. He had left his home for people with disabilities and vanished into thin air. And because of his previous bouts with suicide, police and his mother assumed the worst. Police searched for Edgar's body for years. However, they finally had to admit to his mother the case was closed. And amazingly, 30 years later, a 50-year-old man who lives no more than 80 miles away started having flashbacks of a previous life. And after some DNA testing, they were able to confirm this was in fact Edgar Latulip. And he and his family were able to reunite. Number 2. Rachel Elkiam. Rachel was 16 years old when she disappeared from Israel in 1947. And unknown to her parents, she had fallen in love with an Arab man and they were expecting their first child. Knowing her family wouldn't approve, they eloped. Sadly, shortly after, he was killed by a sniper. And due to rising tensions in the area at the time, they were forced to flee with her husband's family to Syria. Because they couldn't make contact with her, Rachel's family assumed she was dead. However, Rachel was forced to marry one of her husband's brothers, with whom she bore 8 more children. It wasn't until 70 years after her disappearance, her grandson went to the Israeli embassy in London to plead his case. When Rachel got the call from the embassy in London, the case was solved, and the family reunited in Haifa. Number 1. Lula Gillespie Miller. In 1974, Lula felt she was too young to be a mother, so she left her children with her parents in Indiana. That next year, her parents received a letter, but never heard from her again after that. Until a missing persons expert, Scott Jarvis, got involved. He was able to locate her in Texas. Lula admitted to being the missing mother. However, she told authorities she did not want her children to contact her. Cold-hearted.